Okay, I will call the meeting to order. This is our regular scheduled meeting for January 17th. And we just finished closed session and there's nothing to report. Roll call, please.
Director Bargovich,
Here.
Gardini. Here. Logan. Here. Pearson. Here. And Peterson.
Here. Do we need to indicate that balloon is on Zoom?
Lou Pearson's on Zoom.
I know. Do we need to put that in the minutes?
It will.
Thank you. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Would any of the board members like to change the order of business? For tonight? Okay. For our special reports, and I see we have Commander Manueli here from the Sheriff's Department.
Good evening, Michael Manueli, Commander, Sheriff's North Station. Tonight I have your report for December 2022. The station generated 2,016 calls from service compared to last year. We had 1,538. That is a 34% increase. Looking at Templeton, we had 378 compared to last year, 379. 0% change. Compared to San Miguel, they had 148 calls for service this year, last year 143, about a 3% increase. Taking those calls for service from the station, it generated 249 reports. Compared to last year, we had 264 reports, a drop of about 6%. Templeton accounted for 84 reports compared to last year, 97, a drop of about 13%, while San Miguel accounted for 23 reports. Breaking those calls for service down into specific areas, looking at assault and battery, we had a domestic violence, and then we had 3 calls for service where victims transported themselves to the hospital for related injuries. 2 of the victims did not want any type of investigation, and the other occurred in Atascadero's jurisdiction. Disturbances, there were 19 disturbances, generating 5 reports. We had a guest at a house. They been invited to stay there, causing a disturbance. Then we had a family fight, and then we had a family member threatening to hurt another. Burglaries, there were 5 calls for service, generating 5 reports. They were all vehicle related. So vehicles getting broken into. We had equipment stolen from a vehicle. We had a vehicle window smash where the purse was stolen out of the vehicle. We had victim receive an alert stating their credit card had been used. Upon further investigation, they found the vehicle had been smashed and the credit card was used out of that. And then we had another vehicle window smash with an unknown loss. Thefts, we had package delivery stolen. We had Christmas decorations stolen. We had construction site theft valuing $10,000 and catalytic converter. Vandalisms, we had 3 calls for service generating 3 reports. 10 trespassing, we had 1 phone scam. Caller reached the elderly victim, said they were AT&T, your computer has a virus, and scanned them out of several hundred, I think it's close to $400. Suspicious circumstances, 14, generating 1 report where a male subject was looking for his blonde girlfriend. He was ultimately arrested for outstanding warrants. As I previously said, back in December, Christmas time is an opportunity for thefts. A lot of kids are out of school and a lot of people are looking for things, and our report tonight proves that. And that is my report for the month.
Are there any questions? Any questions from the public? Well, thank you for your report, and thank you for all the hard work you did this last weekend. We appreciate that. We appreciate you being around always, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good week and good month.
Stuart.
Okay, Highway Patrol, Commander Stewart.
Sir, Chandler Stewart, Commander of the Templeton Highway Patrol Office. Good to be with everyone tonight. This is our report for essentially the month of December 2022 for roadways in and around the Templeton area. Total crashes investigated for the period were 30. That's 22 up on the freeway, 8 on county roads surrounding Templeton. That's up 1 or 3% over the same period the prior year. Of those, property damage collisions accounted for 23. That's up 1 from the prior year. That's where the increase occurred. There was 7 injury collisions that on par of the prior year. There were 4 DUI collisions, four crashes involving a DUI driver. That's down 1 from the prior year, or off 20%. There were no fatal collisions for the month of December. We're happy to report, and that's the same as the prior year. There were 185 total enforcement contacts for the period in the areas around and about Templeton. 170 of those were up on the freeway, 15 on county roads. That's up 45 from the prior year, or 32%. Total citations issued 112 for the period. 105 of those were up on the freeway. That's up from 87 the prior year, or a 22% increase. And of those, 85 were maximum speed violations. 82 occurred up on the freeway, 3 on county roads, and 7% increase from 62. There were 3 citations issued for speed in excess of 100 miles per hour up on the freeway. That's up 1 from the prior year. We continue to battle that throughout our jurisdiction and throughout the state. There was a seatbelt violation, also an 8 DUI arrests for the period, up 1 from the prior year. To give you an idea on some of the jurisdiction-wide enforcement, there were 223 public or motorist services during the period. That's up from 213 the prior year. There were 963 enforcement actions for the period throughout the jurisdiction that we cover. That's up significantly over 2021 and 2020. You may be aware we haven't had the chance to talk a whole lot through the holidays and so forth, and then I've been busy with volleyball at the high school in the fall. We have a grant, a Templeton area safety corridor grant that began at the beginning of the federal fiscal. Just give you a report on what's going on there. This is all moving violations with particular emphasis on speed, lane change, and following too close on all the roadways in Templeton area, the state numbered and US numbered roadways. We have a particular influence on the 46, or a particular emphasis on the 46. For the first quarter of the grant period, there was 384 citations issued on the grant alone. So the numbers that I previously mentioned don't include the grant enforcement. So when officers have been out working on the grant hours, they issued 384 citations. And in addition to that, 34 instances where they warned people, which could have been citations. That gets us over 400 for the period, and about 45 aids to motorists in the area, and 1 DUI arrest. Some additional investigations of possible DUIs, but no arrests were made in 2 other cases. And that's our report.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
No.
Any questions for the board? Okay, thank you again very much, and I'll echo what I said before. Thank you for all you guys do to keep us safe.
It's nice to be dry.
Yeah. Okay, the next item is a recognition of investigator class competition completion. Captain Wall hasn't been with us the last 2 or 3 times we tried this, so I'm glad you could make it.
We pinned him down. We actually got him on duty tonight.
That's one point.
Yeah. Thank you, members of the board. It's my privilege tonight to present Captain Brandon Wall with his investigator badge. I won't go through all the details that I bored you with last time with Captain Goldblum, but I'll just highlight that we talked about what a fire investigator does, what their duties are on a fire investigation scene, their training and what they go through, the task book, the continual training that they'll go through, and how they will eventually become an investigator 1 or investigator 2. And that's through the process of going out through what we call our slow fist program, which are county investigators and investigator strike team and investigating fires. And it's that simple. So they get the experience and then they go back and apply that to further classes, bring that experience back to us. And then we, when we have a fire in town, these guys can take care of it. So with that, I want to congratulate Captain Wall. Then with his fire investigation badge.
Nice.
Speech.
I mean, appreciate all support throughout the years being here. Wouldn't have picked a better place, so we're pretty fortunate. So looking forward to taking the next step. So thank you very much.
Thank you for investing your time.
Oh,
I just, since we have CHP Sheriff and the Fire Department here, I just want to acknowledge and thank you all for what you've done the last couple of weeks with all this rain. While I've been sitting home in front of the fireplace, I've been watching the news and looking at some of the devastation and that the rain has caused in our area. And I think it's worth acknowledging, all of you have been out there in the rain and dealing with some of the incidents that have occurred because of all this rain that we've received. And so anyway, I just want to say thank you.
That's why we do our job. People like you. Thank you.
okay, seeing as we have a number of public here, I will read our public comment section here. The members of the public may address the board on any items of interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. In compliance with the Brown Act, the board cannot discuss or act on items not on the agenda. However, board members or district staff members may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by the public. Additionally, on their own, may ask a question for clarification. Further, the board may request staff to report back to the body at a subsequent meeting concerning any matter or to take action to direct staff to place the matter of business on a future agenda. So with that, do we have any public comment? Okay, with that, we'll move right along to the consent agenda. We have 6 items on the consent agenda. Would anybody like to
So I
remove
just,
an item or?
I don't want to remove necessarily, but I just want to comment on consent agenda item F, the injury and illness prevention program update. I noticed that in the policy, one of the updates was to add Chief Peterson's name. And what I'd like to recommend is that we just say the fire chief and not an individual's name, because that's consistent with the other verbiage, which says the general manager, and it doesn't say general manager Griltz. It's not naming an individual, it's naming the position per se. So that would be my only comment.
Well, why don't we remove that and then we can discuss
Okay,
it later.
we can do that.
if we need to make a. Any other comments? Does the public have any comments on the consent agenda? Okay, I'll take a motion for items A through E.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by
Giardini?
No, Director Fardnish.
Ardenish, seconded by Giardini. Roll call.
Directors Hardonish.
Aye.
Giardini,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Pearson,
Aye.
and Peterson.
Aye. Okay, item F, the injury and illness prevention program item.
I can address the comment that came up, which is, it's a great suggestion. That was which one of the changes that was necessary was because the prior version named the a prior fire chief. And so, if the board's comfortable with that one change, we can make it after the board approves, and we can make it, the board's approval can be conditioned on us making that change administratively, and just note that as fire chief as opposed to Chief Peters.
Okay. So I'll make a motion,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve item F on the consent agenda with the correction of Fire Chief Peterson to be a street fire chief.
Actually, I had one more comment or edit, I guess. In that same first couple lines, it says Templeton Community Services District, but then it doesn't have the parentheses with the abbreviation, but then we further continue to reference it with the abbreviation. So just an editing comment of maybe adding after Templeton Community Services District TCSD, so that we know the rest of the document is referring to.
We can make that correction administratively. Well, if the,
I'll add that to my motion.
It's in the same paragraph.
Okay, so and adding TCSD in parentheses after Templeton Community Service District would be also to my motion.
Motion made by Giardini, seconded by,
I'll second that motion.
roll call, please.
Directors, excuse me, Giardini,
Yes.
Logan,
Aye.
Pardonish.
Aye.
Pearson
Aye.
and Peterson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to the business agenda. We have 5 items on that, and the first one is the appointment of internal standing committees. Jeff, you want to?
yes, thank you much. The board will certainly recall that last fall, there was interest in a greater level of engagement, particularly from initially anyway, from the folks who had shown interest in serving on the board. And the board directed us to amend the district's bylaws to permit the appointment of residents to serve on internal standing committees. The pertinent section is quoted here. Essentially, the policy was amended to permit up to 3 residents who had to be age 16 years old and or older and reside within Templeton CSD boundaries to serve on up to 3 per committee. Following the enactment of that change, the district solicited interested parties and received 3 applications. Those 3 applications from 3 people, all 3 are here tonight, so that's a great start, right? So 2 of the 3 selected 2 committees to serve on, or and I don't the application probably isn't as clear as it should be. It's not clear whether that's if there's a priority ranking or either of the committees or both of the committees. So perhaps the board would want to ask the applicant, since they're actually in person here tonight. And then one resident selected just 1. I've recommended that the board spread out the resident participation and appoint 1 member to each of the 3 committees that they had applied for. That would be Jerry Gast to Parks, Recreation, and Refuse, Eric Mortensen to Administration and Finance, and Daniel Bossanich to Fire and Emergency Management Committees for the coming year. Since the appointment is valid for a year, members could apply or could stay longer. Additionally, 2 members also wished to serve or include on their application service on the Fire and Emergency Management Committee. So either Jerry Gast or Eric Mortensen or both could also be appointed to the Fire Committee, although it's not necessary, and perhaps they'd want to just serve on 1. But I did think it was important if we had 3 people to spread out that participation to as many areas that the district covers as possible, which is why I recommended appointing 1 to each of the 3 committees. That would leave all of the committees that the district has, except 1 facilities, having at least 1 resident on the committee. I'm happy to answer any questions. The board packet includes their application, and again, they are actually here tonight. And since they came, probably would be willing to comment further if you'd like.
Question, can Jerry serve on both committees or does he need to choose one? It sounds like he could serve on both. but
Yeah, our
you
policy
spread
can-
them out.
Right, our policy allows doesn't limit it to just one committee.
Okay,
We can have up three, I think.
Three.
The
So
policy.
you can have 3 residents on any individual committee and they can serve on multiple committees and they can serve multiple terms.
so it's up to Jerry whether or not he.
It's up to
wants
the board, I guess, I mean, it's up to, right, it's up to Jerry whether he wants to serve on 2 committees or Eric in that case as well, but my recommendation was that at a minimum, you spread, we get residents on three committees instead of just all on one.
I would think since our policy states that we can have up to 3, and if they're willing to serve on 2 committees, that we take advantage of this great opportunity that we haven't had for many, many years of getting the public involved. So if they want to be on 3 or 4 committees, that's fine with me.
2.
Just 2?
He was trying to sell you on 3.
So if the board concurs, I would say put them on the committees that they have asked for.
Yeah, I think maybe just to clarify, it sounded like Jerry was willing to serve on 2, looked like it, I don't know if Eric's the same case or.
to see about my workload right now, I'm willing to accept 1.
So, okay, sounds like maybe in his case, just the 1.
And so.
You have a preference, Eric? Admin.
Gee, that's the one you got.
So if that's the case, and if the board wishes to maximize the offer of participation, the board could appoint Jerry Gass to Parks, Recreation, Refuse, as well as Fire and Emergency Services, Eric Mortensen to Administration and Finance, and Daniel Mossage to Fire and Emergency Management.
So I'll make that motion that the board accept the recommendation.
Before you make the motion, would any of our candidates like to address the board on the subject? Okay, seeing none, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that the board approve the appointment of residents to standing committees as followed: Jerry Gass to Fire and Emergency Services, Park and Recreation and Refuge, Eric Mortensen to Finance and Admin, and Dan Mosanich to Finance and Emergency Services.
I'm sorry, for Dan Mossage, Fire and Emergency Services.
Yes,
Have a second? I'll second the motion.
no,
No, he did, I'm sorry. Didn't hear you.
Naveed.
Can't see, you can't hear. Okay, we have a motion made by Debbie Logan and seconded by Naveed Gardenish.
Donish, yeah.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Pardonish,
I mispronounced it too, sorry.
Giardini,
Aye.
Pearson,
Aye.
and Peterson.
Yes. Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for serving.
If you don't mind, I just, since again, you're here, we'll be following up with you with, there is some filing of a Form 700 form. It's an online system, it's pretty easy to use. And then we'll be reaching out to you as we prepare for a committee meeting and solicit your availability to make sure that we do the best that we can in accommodating your schedules for the committee meetings that follow. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you.
And I thank you because I believe all 3 of you, no, 2 of you applied for the TCFD position. We asked you to get involved and I appreciate you doing that. So thank you. You'll be ready to walk into an elected position in 2 years. So good.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the storm response damage. And I know Chief Peterson doesn't have anything to talk about, so. Anyway, are you gonna do the Jeff or?
Yeah,
Chief Peterson?
We're all gonna kind of jump in here, but we've got to outline just some, so as you know, actually, it was a rainy month and then January 9th happened. We've already exceeded our annual precipitation, average annual precipitation levels. It's been a rainy few weeks around here. And particularly because what we dealt with on January 9th and following, wanted to kind of just brief you on that. So this is in no particular order and no particular priority, but we wanted to make sure you left here tonight with any questions that you might have answered. And conclude, see this now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So just, so we kind of prepared this. There we go. Okay, so, and sort of in chronological order, our fire engine responded to a call on just on the other side of the river. And this actually occurred about 2 weeks ago, before the January 9th rain. And the engine just got ever so slightly off the assumed driveway and stuck in the mud. Just an example of what happens when it's real wet.
This is literally about 6 inches off the edge of the pavement. And this, we're just showing this to show the board how actually saturated the soil is and the weight of the engine, and it just sunk.
So did you have to have a tow truck get you out?
We have a check here to the tow truck driver, $450. On the side.
Well, I think,
Did I ask
so
who
I think,
was driving? Tom?
Nope.
No,
Brandon.
well, didn't
Yeah,
Cal Fire
no.
had a similar situation as well, where I think the fire truck,
Cal Fire was coming back westbound on El Pomar.
yeah,
And there was an actual mudslide down on El Pomar that blocked the eastbound lane. A car veered out to miss the mudslide. And as they were veering out, the Cal Fire engine was coming around the corner at the same time. They almost went head on. The Cal Fire engine swerved to the left, got its wheel off
Yeah.
the pavement, and it sucked it down the rest of the way. And they almost went into the
yeah,
river.
because it looked like it almost went on its side.
Yeah.
So this was before January 9th, so I did. What occurred on January 9th in particular was a little, you know, we have flooding issues in town. When it rains hard, but what happened on January 9th was more extensive than we typically see during a major storm event. And I'll use this one so the public can kind of see. So this is the area, this area we have just right over here. Old County Road is here, Florence. And then this is Toad Creek, this vegetated area that runs right here. And if you didn't know that creek could move a lot of water, if you were out there on the 9th, you see just how wet it got. What was unique about this circumstance this time was by about daybreak, all 3 of these bridges through this part of town, Los Tablas, Eddy, and Florence, had water cresting the bridge. In the case of Eddy, this was really if it was not closed, it should have been closed all day. We had water up to the guardrails, at least a foot deep for the vast majority of the day. Los Tablas, the county put out flooded signs. The road was open, but there was at least 6 inches of water in some vehicles. Should not have gone down that road. I'm not aware of anyone who actually had trouble, but there was water cresting the bridge for hours that day. In Florence, it came just over the top of the bridge. Not too bad. It was never closed, although it did a few inches of water did come across the bridge. That's just in my observation. This Salinas Avenue area, this area right near Eddy, it often floods here as well during heavy rains. It was much worse than normal. This image is from that day, looking from Eddy Street up the road. You can see just how much no, I'm sorry, here's Eddy right here.
Yes.
So this is looking down towards Eddy, water's flowing this direction. So that was impassable all that day. And again, this flooding condition occurred this past Saturday, although not as severe. So all 3 of these bridges, this is Eddy Street at one point during the day, but the water was quite high. This was not passable, but for the tallest of vehicles. So
that section on Salinas is probably 4.5 feet deep right there. So a car would definitely submerge in that.
it was pretty severe, you know, you're probably used to seeing that. Normally, I'd say, you know, it affects those property owners, but, you know, there's usually a way to get around, you know, but these property owners were pretty much stuck in their homes that day. Several of them, I think the fire department was prepared to evacuate those folks by walking them out through the water if need be. There was not gonna be a response to the home or with a vehicle. It was quite deep. So that was unusual. Here's a circumstance that happened early in the day. There were actually two mudslides on Los Tablas on both sides of 101. This one was a little worse. So this is on the west side. This is the southbound off ramp. And you can see the mud had slid down and blocked this road, and our crews cleaning it up to restore access to the roadway. I think finally Caltrans came by and.
Correct. Caltrans came by with a truck that had a skid plate on the front of it and pushed the remaining part of the mud out, but this blocked the entire westbound lane. The slide came down that far.
So it's a really important roadway for Templeton, right? This is their access to the hospital and through town. So that was unexpected. Tina Meyer took these photographs, and this is actually running along a creek, but our sewer line, you can see here, she took these photographs just because you saw how close the water came to coming into the sewer line. This is just southwest of the west side lift station. This is the Rolling Hills Apartments immediately behind it. This is an area that People Self-Help Housing plans to add some additional development on both sides of these creeks. This creek area. Same vicinity. This is another kind of new one. This is Bethel Road between Vineyard and Los Tablas. We're close to one of our board members. And
That's going behind my house.
yeah, there's a creek crossing. If you've driven by since then, you notice this fence has been pushed over, and this was like in the middle of the afternoon when this kind of
Correct, yeah.
became flooded, impassable for an hour or two.
Yeah, this is that long.
But you can see the volume of water and how, it was fairly significant. And then German Park. So this is this lower area of German Park where the larger soccer field is, serves as a basin during storm events to prevent water, the volume of water from continuing to flow down into the creek area. But often on Monday, this occurred several times where it would rise and then virtually come back and then rise up again. And then by the end of the day, this was gone. It never got dangerously high. You can kind of see it's just, it's not too deep because you can see the bank over here on the far side. But it's been many years since there's been water in the basin.
Tom, do you remember when that actually overflew into the neighborhood?
That was in, I want to say the early 90s. I think 93, 94.
Okay,
That drain backed up and it flooded that home
yeah.
right there in Goodell, right across from the park. That's got the kind of cinder block wall around it now.
We
And,
weren't close to that this time, though, right?
No, it never got alarmingly high, but it did, like I said, we kept our eye on it because it had water, a pretty good volume of water. We did lose a tree at German Park. Here's that. Here's just a picture of the river. This is off the Vineyard Bridge. River was raging that day, and I'll show you some more information as we get later. But the river really reached a very high level in the mid-afternoon to late afternoon, and it was really moving. Whole trees were going by. It was really moving a lot of water. And later on, I'll show you some of the volumes that we have from Paso Robles gauge. And then actually just our site, the Selby site is adjacent to the river. The district's wastewater treatment plant is located on the west side of Highway 101, south part of town. once that water is treated, it is piped down to this location. It crosses Highway 101 here under the railroad tracks. And this site we call Selby Ponds is located on the southernmost part of town. Here you see the Paso Robles Creek and then the Salinas River. We really saw something that had never occurred there before. These are our two primary wastewater percolation ponds. We call them ponds D and E. They are the most effective at percolating wastewater. This pond here, and I'll show you right now.
Treated wastewater.
Treated wastewater, sorry, treated effluent, yes. Became overwhelmed by the river. There's a better picture. Let's see here, I think probably is the best one. So this is looking, the vantage point is like standing here and aiming towards this. There's a fence line that runs right along here. So that's looking from this way. The pond, you can't identify, but the levee runs through like this direction here. And this picture, I took it. So this ripple is actually water sheeting across above the level of the pond. So if you were there that day, you really wouldn't know that the pond existed. The river at this point, you can see here, has risen up into the fence line. We have some photographs, other locations where it's as high as the top of the fence or into the barbed wire area. This is looking a little bit more to the north. There's a pile of debris or stuff that we've pulled out of the ponds here, and the neighboring pond is right next door over here. The neighboring pond, so that would be E, had water coming into it, but no evidence of water leaving it. So the spill, which has been reported, or what I'll say is that when the river overtook the pond, we had about 300,000 gallons of treated wastewater effluent at the bottom of the pond, about 20 inches. And when the river came into it, the river water, which ran for several hours, the river water mixed obviously with that water and flooded out of the pond. So we assume that virtually all that treated effluent left and went into the river. And that became quite an ordeal for us in terms of the reporting and what was required. It was not this was not a sewer spill. This was treated effluent. It was not actually spilled, but rather the river kind of overtook where we percolated. So it's kind of a unique set of circumstances. So this was at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then here's another picture. This is a very southeastern corner of that pond, and the levee runs right underneath it here. Again, you can see this area over here is the Paso Robles Creek, where it intersects with the Salinas River, and that creek water was just diverted because of the high river flow right into and over our pond. Here's that adjoining pond, E, which just started receiving effluent that morning, would have had inches at the most of wastewater in it prior to the event, and here it's shown as being virtually full. Did have water kind of just sheeting across, not shown well in this photograph, but just sheeting across this area into it. So when I reported to you on last Monday and said that we've got a major event, we weren't sure what we were going to find the next day. Based on the flow and the volumes, and the river was still rising or potentially rising at that point, we weren't sure if it would wash out the levee or be pretty destructive. Very fortunate that didn't happen. Here's a couple more photographs of the same vantage point. This is the same pond. This is the southern levee in this location. Here's a couple more pictures show some damage. We had some erosion around some of our infrastructure. This is the southern edge of the facility. Behind the pond that got inundated, the ponds behind it, we call A, B, and C, they're actually elevated about 3 feet. When they were constructed, there was some protection from the creek built there. That's something that I think we're going to look at considering down the road on some of these other ponds. So here you can see just this is the Paso Robles Creek and Salinas River has become a very vast body of water during that time. It was hundreds of yards wide and really an impressive body of water. And then the next day, this is the same area looking out, the same vantage point, actually, you can see the fence line, it's not zoomed in. It left behind a full pond, but really the levees were, and the roads around them were in pretty solid shape. There is some evidence of some erosion on this eastern border of this same levee. Although some of this erosion existed previously. But you can see how far the water had fallen just in a day, about 4 or 5 feet lower than it was. The prior day was at the top of that fence line. Again, more images, the same pond, you can see that the levee all around it. There is, what we did is we wanted to examine the condition of the ponds. We were concerned about levee damage, obviously, erosion of the levees, and sediment like sand or silt being more problematic, being deposited from the river water. The river's very brown, very dirty, a lot of sediment in that water. So we were pumping water essentially out of this pond into other ponds, both the lower ponds, so we can examine the condition of those ponds. And they're virtually down to the bottom at this point. I don't have the photos of that, but they're much lower. Here, again, this is the following day, the existing levee looking directly east. Looks pretty good, all things considered. There is some evidence of erosion along this boundary here when the water first rose up, it flowed quickly into the pond before it filled it. And there's some erosion of that levee, pretty minor. Just some more images of the site after the fact. So here you can see just again, really a day later, on Monday afternoon, this was all water up against these rocks, covering the bottom of this gopher bait device, all water, all gone within 24 hours. So this was a pretty significant event for us. Again, this has been reported. Justin just got a lot more hands-on experience with that than I, although was not anticipated. We didn't expect the river to rise so quickly and inundate that pond. It had never occurred since the ponds had been built. So it was pretty fascinating and interesting, and really I feel from an infrastructure perspective that we really are pretty fortunate given the circumstances. There will be some repairs that we do, and we have incurred some costs, but nothing that's crazy. And we have reported that these costs and all of the expenses that the district dealt with to the county OES, and with the hope of potentially getting some cost recovery from FEMA. Let's see, this one was another really interesting site, and I think worth mentioning. This is a property that we call Creekside. The fire training facility is located here. This is an outdated photograph. There's some more stuff in this area. Here's the railroad tracks, of course, the river, and this compound or this fence line contains 2 wells, the district's deep well and then the river well here. And you can see the bank of the river is pretty clearly here. This road is, it slopes downhill, but it really doesn't go downhill steep until you get to this section. It's kind of a private crossing, or it's not one that we use. But that afternoon when the river rose, this was the circumstance. The water came up, well up into the fence line. And we had to turn these wells off because of the rising water level. But you can see the river water climbing into the fence line here. So, and again, this really doesn't, the slope down into the river doesn't start until you're already around this area. It is a minor slope, but it's relatively flat along this area. Another area that we really had a lot of challenges with is over here. This is what we call our lift station 3 site. You may recall, this is where we had the ribbon cutting for the East Side Force Main project. That day, I guess it's been about 4 years ago. In any event, our access to this property is on this driveway from Ramada, typically. And come Monday morning, when our crew went to come out to this site, that's what it looked like. was very inaccessible. I think that's been proven.
Yeah, if I could add, Jeff, that I don't have pictures, we don't have pictures of staff trying to get to that site, but at 5:30 in the morning, that's when when that station first went into high level alarm. As there was storm waters flowing down the river and kind of around, around the community. Those were entering the sanitary sewer system as well. And so we were seeing our sewer system inundated, and those wet wells, lift station 3 and west side, all in alarm by 5:30 in the morning. So crews were out trying to assess and trying to operate those facilities. One of those early on that we got tried to get access to and we had to turn around was lift station 3.
Yeah, so this was inaccessible and actually later on, we tried to get them, this is a little outdated photograph, but there's a road that's been cut here. But it was just so muddy, it was not navigable by vehicles. So our crews actually walked in, I think from here down to the site that afternoon, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, we walked at the end of Ruth there on through that
Here. So this becomes a priority. It's again, something that we had not observed before. We need access to these sites, especially during storm events. And so we're gonna be working to identify other ways to reach it by vehicle. Really, this was potentially a significant impediment.
Want to purchase a rowboat?
I have a kayak, and it's available for loan.
Too.
Yeah.
Rent from me.
So really what we need to be able to do is potentially get like a pump truck down here because, and I'll get to, in a minute, we'll get to these photographs, some of the things we dealt with that day. So this was pretty kind of interesting. I guess in hindsight, everything was interesting. It could have been potentially disastrous.
So you need, this is a really stupid question. You need to get there. Why? To turn things off. You can't turn it off remotely?
Yeah, so some things you have to do at the site. And that may be even in terms of opening up the wet well and being able to put your eyes, being able to observe what's going on with the controls and the wet well. And so in particular, lift station 3 that day, because it was an high wet well, it went into a redundant operation mode where a float was operating the pumps up and down instead of the brains of the lift station, the PLC. And so staff were there to try and first and foremost get it off of the flow control and rely on the PLC. But as Jeff was pointing out a moment ago, if the station needed to be pumped out via pump truck, or if it needed a bypass pump and be able to ultimately to bypass the whole lift station, we wouldn't have been able to get to it during the storm event.
So two of our other lift stations, and we don't have photos of them. Monday morning, the west side lift station, which is really important, they're all important, but it moves almost all the sewage to the plant from the collection system. Was rising, pumps running full speed. And so the crews, Justin's team activated a septic service to come and take some of the load off by pumping the material into a truck and then driving it to the plant. And we also bypassed the VFD drive, the variable frequency drive, and that enabled the motor to spin at a higher rate and move more water. So those two things kept it from spilling, but had this facility had challenges like, let's say a motor burnt out, or we had normally during these, I shouldn't say normally, but it's not uncommon to have power problems during these major storm events. We were very lucky that we really didn't encounter that last week. Those things cause these equipment to go offline and need to be reset, and even though we have backup generation, nothing is foolproof. So this facility could have been one where we decided that we wanted to send a pump truck, but because of the condition of this road and that being our only access point, it would not have been able to get there. But
Was that lying in a flood hazard zone?
the lift station or the roadway?
Lift station.
Well, this is elevated up here, so there's just a real low spot in this area right here. The water was coming in this photograph. You can kind of see. So our lift station is it's flooded in the midsection here, then it rises back up when you get toward the railroad track, and our facility is right up against the railroad track back there. So it was really not the facility location, but the access to it. This had never been observed before. So it's just something that we need to work through and get another access point. Fortunately, because it was still operational, it didn't become the only priority for the day, and we were working on other things. We probably would have figured something out if we really needed to. This site is actually just east of the district's boundaries. We're just showing it because it just shows a lot of destruction. This is a drainage inlet coming across Vaquero Road on the other side of the river into the Salinas River, and the culverts got plugged, and all of this destruction is a result of the overflow of that material. And this is the Nacimiento pipeline, which we're a member of, runs in this roadway. This is a piece of infrastructure that's attached to it. This is a valve box that was Sunday or sometime before Monday up here on the road. This all got washed out with this problem there. So a pretty significant issue. We did lose a tree. This is the district's water tank site. This is a roadway that has not only for the water tank site, but serves, there's a few houses up here that utilize this roadway.
Is this up at Lincoln?
It is. One less tree.
Haven't been up there.
So that occurred. On Tuesday, this tree fell down right over here by the elementary school. And what made this kind of unique or interesting was, is this the water meter box right there?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay. So what made this kind of interesting is the call came in, tree down, water line broken. But when Justin got there to check out the situation, the tree was laying on these wires that hold up this power pole. And we were concerned that the tree was still moving around. It couldn't shut off the water. The broken water line was reported as a water main, but it was a service line to the house. We had to wait until the county came in and started removing some of the tree before it was safe to get under there to turn off the water. It was kind of interesting. And then I learned about this more recently. This is the Vineyard Bridge looking south, Tom, correct?
Yes, looking southbound.
And you can see there's a building that was
Or west, I guess, southwest.
towards towards Atascadero, right? And so there's a building that when the river flowed high, widened the banks of the river and actually have left part of the building overhanging the.
Undercut the building.
Yeah, so.
That's a residence, isn't it?
It's
There's something weird there.
It's a shop.
It's a shop.
Yeah.
But it's not part of the school property, right?
No,
No.
it's
Well,
private property.
It's across the street from the school.
Yeah.
We just show this because it's interesting just to show again, how much that major river flow did. And this is an example of, I have not received a lot of reports of significant private property damage, but this is one that clearly has an issue. Probably gonna, and not gonna get better.
It's about a 3-foot overhang of the actual foundation.
Then last Thursday afternoon, we were notified that a delegation of that was to include Assembly Member Don Addis, State Senator John Laird, and Congressman Panetta were coming through northern San Luis Obispo County and touring each community with storm damage. So we had a 30-minute visit with them on Saturday. And then I didn't know it, but Bruce Gibson and John Pashong were also part of the delegation. So we took them to the Selby site and also to the flooding area near Salinas and Eddy Street, just to show some of the impacts the community had and describe it showed them, but didn't stop at the 2 mudslides off of the 101 because that's really a Caltrans area. Anyway, that was just Saturday. And then I wanted to bring up a couple things because this is pretty interesting just to see you know, how high the water got. I mentioned to you that, you know, we had a forecast for kind of a dry winter, right, all the way through like October. But we had a significant rainstorm in October, a significant one in November, significant one in early December. It was really looking much more positive. And then, of course, a couple weeks of dry, and then from about just before New Year's through really yesterday, it's raining virtually every day in that 2.5 week spell. So there's a couple of websites that I think you might find interesting that I just wanted to show you. One, for the purposes of the Salinas River, this takes you to a USGS site that we monitor. And you can go to any state, and this will be live, this will be current. So this little blue dot right here represents the Salinas River in Paso Robles. It's the Paso Robles gauge of the Salinas River. And you can actually double click here or click on this. And so now you see the gauge height. This is live, it's updated like every 15 minutes. And if I go back to 30 days, which is pretty helpful, you can see the storm event. And just how fast the river rose in terms of height at that location. It wasn't that high here, but it was much wider around, at least around the Selby site. And then how fast it declined. We used this information to determine how long we thought the river had overtaken that pond, something like 3 hours of that event, because of how fast the river rose and how fast it went down. These lines represent action stage and various flood stages. This solid line, I believe, is called a minor flood stage, and the dashed line, which it nearly hit, is called moderate flood stage. But what's really kind of interesting, they say that there's data back to the 1930s, but I haven't been able to find it. But you can go back to any date period you want. Every time I've checked this recently, it only goes back to about 2005. But I'll try 0101 2000 to right now. So 01 dash, oops. This is all public information. We'll pull up this data. Maybe.
Mice are spinning on that wheel.
So, and you use this data for what?
Well, because this illustrates to us, we never saw what happened. At Selby site on
Ever before.
Yeah.
this event. So this was January 9th, right here.
So it's just way out.
Way higher than all the previous high flows dating back to 2000. Now, I know there were high flows in the 90s. This particular, it's not electronically available. But it just shows just how, I mean, you know, you're talking about, this is about 23 feet right here. So we have 1, 2, 3, they maybe go 23, 24 feet. This thing's 30, almost 33 feet. Like, it's considerably higher. Now, again, the river wasn't 10 feet deeper than ever before at our location, but it does show just the volume of water. And quite surprisingly, the same data set, if we go back to this original one, it's kind of harder to see on here, but it lists, if you click on this peak number, this is the height of the river. And then it grabs prior peaks. This date, I believe, is 1969. The river at this moment on Monday was the highest, according to this data, that it's ever been. Now, from a volume of water perspective, this is the same date, January 9th. And there were a couple of days that were about the same or a little bit higher. I can't read it from that far away, but I think this is like 95. And so from a cubic feet per second, it wasn't quite the maximum, but the height of the flow at the Paso gauge was the highest ever according, and this is the United States Geological Survey, USGS. It's really pretty interesting, this information that's available to us here. The other thing I wanted to illustrate, let's see if it will, this is a great website that the public or you may want to visit. This is if you Google SLO County Water, it'll take you to this address. And the county's got a really cool data set here. You can monitor precipitation in real time at a number of sites. So I know it's not that helpful today, but here's Templeton. This is the sheriff's substation. So we've had what 0.01 inches in the last 24 hours. But what's interesting, so this during these major storm events, this has been pretty close to what we've received at the wastewater plant. But you can get a lot of data right off of this about our rate. So like if I go to this, again, you can just mess around if you'd like, but this this is the rainfall from July 1st. At that location, we're already at nearly 22 inches of rain. And you can see in this is the January 9th event, about 6 inches of rain in 24 hours, which is pretty consistent with what we saw at the wastewater treatment plant.
Was that road down by the sheriff's station flooded when you couldn't pass it? Because that's a really low spot down there.
It did not flood, no. The access road to the sheriff's station?
No, but the road, Main Street going across.
No, it was just about to crest. That creek and undercrossing there was getting plugged up. And it was just at that point towards the end of the storm where
With them moving the sheriff's station there, are they looking at that might be a problem, or will, because they can always go north, it's not gonna be a problem?
well, it north, yeah, so we'll still be able to access it from the 101 coming the other way, but it didn't crest Main Street, so this was a pretty significant event.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. We didn't have problems on Main Street.
No,
The other thing a couple of things that are pretty helpful available from this website that you may want to look at is I was watching the Salinas Reservoir that when the reservoir spills is when we typically get much more significant runs down the river. And it just so happened that I'm now looking at Salinas Reservoir, and I could change this time period to like say 30 days. And this is the elevation. The reservoir spills at 1,300 and just under 1 feet. And this is in December, so it was, 15 feet below. These are the rain events. Here's January 9th. And it spills at about right here, just before this rain event happened, right? This is 1,300 feet. It actually was 11, 12 feet above the rim of during that afternoon on that Monday over the spillway, and then has started coming down. Of course, this weekend's rain, it went up again and now it's started coming down again. So the reservoir is continuously spilling and has been since the morning of the 9th, which is one of the reasons why we had such a high, such a significant river flow. The other thing that they maintain is a link right here when you want to look at Lake Nacimiento, because a lot of people ask, well, how's the lake looking or whatever. You don't have to wait until Thursday when KSBY publishes it. You can click here. They maintain a data. Monterey County maintains this data. This is as of today. It's pretty hard to see. I think it would say 89% this morning. The lake level. So all this is updated daily. Now there are periods of time when it's not updated, like, but yeah, it's they've also started flood releases. They were releasing 60 CFS through last week, and now I think today it's up to about 3,600 CFS to kind of maintain the lake level. So it rose up dramatically. So from a water supply perspective, both the rise in the Salinas Dam is terrific, and of course we're a member of the Nacimiento Water Project. So I wanted just to show you where that information is available in case you're interested. Really, there were a few other things I wanted to kind of go over that weren't available in pictures. That we have. We had roof leaks in a couple of buildings, a minor one with the recreation department. We've got a couple that date back to December at the fire station, waiting on roofer to show up. Still,
they're going to be here Thursday to evaluate.
Super.
So they just called me.
So we did notice that. Our influent meter, whenever we get these massive flows, a lot of heavy material gets stirred up in the collection system. And it made its way to the headworks, which is good. We'd rather have it not in the collection system. But during the storm event, it rose up the water level because of the deposit of these heavier materials like eggshells and coffee grounds and other stuff that's sometimes in the bottom of the sewer line. And so the influent meter reading is gonna be inaccurate for that period of time. We'll read too high. We'll use estimates based on the West Side Lift Station pumping time, pumping volumes. We did bring on a second fire crew for the day just because of anticipated call volumes. We weren't overwhelmed. Again, I think fortunate we didn't have power problems. But we did respond to a number of flooding calls, these road closures that we showed, or road issues that we showed you. County, you know, they were not able to keep up with road closures or things like that. So really our fire crew were the first on scene, and when that was necessary, did assist some customers with sandbagging, those kinds of things. As I mentioned, we had a pump truck come in on both Tuesday and Wednesday, Monday and Tuesday, Monday for the West Side Lift Station, which ran most of the day, just to try to take a little bit of flow out of that lift station to hopefully prevent a spill, which we did. There was not a spill. And then had the pump truck respond also on Tuesday at the Volpe Isabel lift station. Didn't actually end up using it, but it was there because we were seeing rapid rises in the wet well, and this is after the storm event. So we suspect that we had some discharges going on into clean outs and those kind of things from that service area, because there was no more rain falling, and still the lift station was overwhelmed. But I eventually did catch up. We did have really cooperative citizens. For quite a while that day, we weren't responding to service calls. Our utility crew was spread very thin, preventing sewer spills essentially. And we were actually responding to what was reported as a sewer spill, turned out to be a storm drain problem that took the crew, 6 people out of service for a couple hours. I did have citizens drop off food that afternoon for anybody who was on duty. Did have some challenges with staffing. One of our crew members was unable to get out of his house because of a flooded road that morning and come to work, as an example. So it was a very significant day for the entire team, where I think we're sit here today feeling pretty fortunate in the whole scheme of things. But a lot of our neighbors, didn't make it quite as smoothly, had more serious issues in their communities. But we were very close. I mean, a little heavier rain, a little longer duration of rain, we would have ended up with very likely spills or other worse problems. And then I just learned tonight, since the meeting started, that we now have a federal disaster declaration for SLO County. It was for Santa Barbara County originally, and we've all been lobbying for that. We've submitted our expenses and just learned, I don't know what will happen, but just learned that we got the declaration for a federal disaster. That should help with both private party loss recovery and infrastructure damage, those kinds of things. And we will be seeking funding if it's available, not only for our direct costs that we've already incurred, but also for improvements or to correct situations like, for example, access to that lift station, or improvements out at Selby to prevent what occurred again if funding is available.
So you don't get funding for time spent on personnel?
We submitted just today for our extraordinary time, not the normal
Not the
scheduled
normal.
time, but overtime with second fire crew, overtime for our utilities crew, and then what we believe will be the direct costs, like at Selby, and we've had a few other like the cost of pumping to prevent a spill, those kinds of things. So I think it's about $24,000 in costs plus anticipated costs. A lot of those have not yet been incurred. We're just anticipating some time to be spent out at Selby to get the ponds back in tip-top shape. Not to raise the levees, just to clean out silt and do some minor erosion correction. So we submitted that today.
Cool, thank you.
So it was, yeah, it was an exciting day.
So what do you think is gonna happen, I guess at the state level with the situation where the water, I guess, came into the pond? Do you have any ideas what the next steps are, what you need to do and?
Well, I think we consider it fully reported now. We've satisfied the state's reporting obligations. There was about a 3-day period where they didn't know. I mean, we reported immediately on Monday. But it wasn't until Thursday that they decided that this needed to be reported as a spill and not just, so that created a report to county environmental health. That's where the release of the information was released to the media about the spill and really was not a sewer spill, it was treated effluent, but understand the reason to acknowledge what occurred. Justin finished coordinating the reporting to the other state agencies today. We consider the matter closed. It's not inconceivable that it might come back with either when our waste discharge permit is reviewed or renewed. Or more information might be requested about it. I'd be really surprised if we end up with something nasty. I mean, there was not an operational. We would have needed a couple weeks notice.
An act of God.
Yeah, it was not something that we were using the system as it was designed. It was not an operational error. Even if we had turned off water to Selby, 3 or 4 days before, it would have still been some of it in the pond. The river just hasn't been that high. So anyway, that's, Justin, any.
You said it, Jeff. So we've finalized all of our reporting right now, state's database and with the Regional Water Control Board at this time. So, we want to be out and be ahead of it and included in perhaps maybe a master plan, added as one of the elements in assessing how we can mitigate this from happening in the future through at least maybe that master plan, but.
Yeah, there are solutions. I mean, right, if the levees are higher in those lower ponds, this wouldn't have occurred in this rain event, but it's not a cheap fix. But we've not been, we'll see, we'll see. At that moment when this occurred, there was like 25,000 cubic feet per second going by on the river. It's a massive volume of water. Really, the public's risk was minimal. And again, I want to reiterate that our wastewater was treated to the plant's design standard, and we actually have been producing really high quality wastewater as of recently. It's just not treated to a standard that allows for a surface water discharge, but that water ends up in the same spot. We percolate it down in the soils next to the river, and it travels the same path as the river, and so it just got there a little quicker this time. It's not, we have secondary treatment. We don't filter the water and we don't disinfect the water. Those are the two elements that would have been necessary for a surface water discharge permit, even if we could have got it. And obviously that was not a permitted discharge. It just happened.
I mean, it was designed for it to go into the river anyway.
It's where it goes.
It is, so.
It just doesn't go there on the surface.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was an interesting day.
Just a quick question, on the agenda, it says, approving or authorizing a budget.
Yeah, you know what, when we wrote the agenda last week, we weren't sure what we were gonna face out at Selby. So, but there's not one that's necessary. Okay. So it's just, this item's just for information only at this point.
Well, thank you for the report. Excellent. And I've been remiss, Justin, thank your crew and utilities for all of that they've done also to keep our water safe. And I know you guys did a great job. Completely forgot about you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Where are we at here? Oh, item C, the water unit relinquishment policy.
Yeah, so again, this is something the board's tackled previously. Last September, we got some pretty specific direction about the method, about the changes the board desired with regard to the relinquishment program. We then sent it to the district's legal counsel to review and to put in format so that it can be codified with the district's code. The legal counsel has recommended that the board take two actions, and then I'll summarize what these actions are with two actions tonight. One would be to approve the policy. And so I'll go through that policy real quickly for you. And then secondly, to introduce an ordinance that would codify the policy into the code. So there would not be a conflict once this ordinance is ultimately approved. And that's 2 readings in 30 days between the policy and the code itself. Because right now our code has a different process for relinquishments. So the policy, I think matches the direction that we received in 2022. That is that you wish to make changes to the relinquishment program, that you see value in making units available to property owners who are going to develop and connect these units. And so therefore, we would change our policy to allow a property owner who has an unused or unconnected water unit to receive a refund instead of a refund from the district for the amount that they paid for that unit, plus the interest that would be earned or that would have been earned at the LAIF rate calculated quarterly since the date of the unit was purchased. We have a spreadsheet that provides that calculation. Additionally, the policy would allow the applicant to receive a refund of water unit base rates paid if these units are part of a virtual water meter agreement. Additionally, the property owner would not have to pay a $500 relinquishment fee to process this. Finally, the units, if they are relinquished, would be made available to the wait list immediately and be issued to property owners who indicated their interest in acquiring additional or new water units. And then finally, I may have missed a point here or there, but finally, if they also have a sewer units that they wish to relinquish, if they make application for that at the same time as the relinquishment of the water units, the $500 relinquishment fee would be waived. The rest of the sewer unit relinquishment process would not change from the existing code, but it's just sort of a carrot to get them to do that at the same time if they wish. So that is what the board had discussed several months ago. That's the policy has been drafted. The ordinance matches verbatim essentially the policy, the draft ordinance does. If it's introduced, it would go to a second reading on February 7th and then take effect in March. But the approval of the policy tonight, if you both approve the policy and introduce the ordinance, would allow us to communicate this information and actually start the process with property owners. We know of at least a couple that may be interested in relinquishing units under the revised program. But we'll make the information available to all of the property owners who have unconnected units. And that might stir up some interest in the meantime. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I hope this is consistent with with what the board's expectation was from last fall.
Any questions for
Comment.
comments?
So how are you're notifying all the potential property owners via letter?
Yes.
Okay, and then, comment was, I thought it was what we asked for, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Any other?
Done here.
Any public comments? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry. Blue, do you have any?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I was present at that last meeting.
All right, can I hear a motion?
I think you need 2 motions, is that right?
One
Yeah.
approving the policy.
Yeah,
Let's actually, I'm sorry, there's really 3 items. There's one other item, and that is approve a budget amendment to fund the relinquishments. And so I've thrown in a big figure. Well, obviously, we're only going to spend the funds of the applied for relinquished units, but we've recommended $250,000 for the remaining fiscal year. When they're reissued, they'll be sold at the current value. We'll get all of the money back and then some, but that is also necessary. So 3 actions: approve the policy. 2, the second action, approve the budget amendment, and then thirdly, introduce the ordinance by title only, waiving the first reading.
Okay, we'll go down the list. A first, approve policy.
I'll make that motion to approve the policy for voluntary relinquishment of water units.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Naveed Fardanish and a second by Debbie Logan. Roll call.
Directors Fardanish,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Jardini.
Aye.
Pearson
Aye.
and Peterson.
Yes. I forgot to ask for public comment.
But I think you
Oh,
had,
you
Yeah, you
did,
did.
you did.
Oh, no, whole thing, okay.
Okay. I'll make a motion also to approve a budget amendment in the amount of $250,000 to the line item 01-6550 water unit relinquishment for fiscal year 22-23 to fund any requested relinquishments.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Fardanish and a second by Director Logan. Roll call.
Directors Fardanish,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Jardini.
Aye.
Pearson
Aye.
and Peterson.
Yes.
I guess finally, make a motion to introduce the ordinance 2023-1 by title only, waiving the first reading.
I'll second that motion.
Here we have a motion made by Director Fardanish and seconded again by Director Logan. Roll call.
Directors Fardanish,
Aye.
Logan,
Aye.
Jardini.
Yes.
Pearson
Aye.
and Peterson.
Yes. Okay, all three motions were approved 5-0. Next on the agenda is the collection of Measure A funds.
yeah, that's me again, and see, you were glad you didn't have to hear me 2 weeks ago. So Measure A approved by the voters in 2019, so, 2.5 years ago, geez, 3.5 years ago. Has it been that long? Wow. Okay, 3.5 years ago, August of 2019, Measure A was approved. When it was approved, it enacted Ordinance 1-2019. That ordinance states that Measure A, the special tax shall be collected in the same manner as property taxes. And that's largely worked out quite well for the district. However, there's about 24 parcels that are subject to the tax, but do not receive property tax bills. These are, I'll describe them as like open space parcels, homeowner association owned parcels, etc., that for one reason or another do not receive a property tax bill, but are not exempt from the Measure A tax. So in working with our tax consultant, we actually began billing these folks directly, and we've received various levels of cooperation or payment receipt from these folks. In some cases, it's very difficult to identify the person of record. Something might have not happened to that parcel in 25 years, and the address that it was last sent to could be somebody who no longer lives here, et cetera. So in working through these issues, we realized that the ordinance that was enacted states that the Measure A special tax shall be collected with property taxes, and instructs the county tax collector to collect those. However, it also says that the district board shall authorize any alternate means of collection. And we had not got formal authorization from the board of directors. So that we put this resolution together to add some additional means of collecting the funds for properties that do not receive property tax bills from the county. And so the resolution, if approved, would authorize the collection through direct billing from the district, direct billing from the district's consultant, or as a line item on the district's utility bill if the subject parcel is also has a utility account with the district. The purpose of this is to sort of clarify that that's the district's intent is to collect it in that manner, and then to allow us to further build these about 24 parcels. So I can't guarantee we're going to receive collections from all of them, because again, some are very, very difficult to contact, and we don't have a lot of means. We could lien the property, but it'll just sit there until the property changes hands, and in most of these cases, they're not likely to ever be sold. They're a dedicated open space parcel or a homeowner's parcel. So nonetheless, we recommend the resolution be approved so that it's clear that that's how you wish to have these particular parcels billed.
But the district has been billing for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because actually in our HOA, we do have a parcel that is just open space. And the homeowners or the management company has been billed. And so that has been collected. So it just sounds like there's just a few that you're having problems
There's
with,
26, and of those, how many are we having trouble with? Like 7 or 8 or?
7.
just a
yeah.
handful.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we wanted, well, it was clear when we kind of were diving into this that we haven't gone through this step, and so
So you're
this makes it more-
expanding all of the
includes
available lots.
filling them already, but this ensures our ability to collect because
Yeah.
we would receive authorization from the board, which is spelled out in the.
Yes, okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Any public comments? Okay, need a motion?
So I'll make a motion that the board approve the authorization of additional methods to collect Measure A special tax revenues. Resolution number 04-2023.
I'll second that.
I think we have to say through direct billing and on any utility bills. I don't know, do we have to?
Well, it's spelled out in the resolution.
Yeah.
It's spelled out.
I'll second. Oh, I'm sorry, you already did.
Oh, okay, we have a motion by Director Logan and seconded by Director Peterson. Roll call, please.
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
Pardonish,
Aye.
Gardini,
Yes.
and Pearson.
Aye.
The motion is approved 5-0. Okay, the next item is the appointment of board members to the internal standing committees. I guess I need to read it, that's me. The Administrative and Finance Committee is Director Logan, Director Peterson. The Facilities Committee is Director Giardini and Director Fardnish. The Fire and Emergency Management are Director Giardini, Director Logan. Parks and Rec and Refuge, Director Fardnish and Director Pearson. And for the external committees, the Nacimiento Commission, Director Peterson, the alternative is Director Giardini. Templeton Area Advisory Group, Director Pearson, Director Logan is the alternative. The Templeton Rec Foundation is Director Pearson. Water Resources Advisory Committee, Director Logan, and Tina Meyer will be the alternative. And the GSA Executive Committee, Director Fardnish, and the alternative is Director Peterson. Any questions, comments? Public, any questions, any comments?
So that would be in addition to the members of. public
In
that
addition
we
to our
briefly,
members of
discussed.
public, which Jerry Gass will be on the Fire and Emergency Services and the Parks and Rec and Refuge Committee. Director Eric Mortensen will be on the Administrative and Finance Committee, and Daniel Masovich will be on the Fire. And again, I'd like to thank you guys for doing this. Director.
Just because, Director Pearson is new to our, directorship here. I have a question on, I have sat on the Templeton Area Advisory Group and so did,
I have,
and you have, and they can go on for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And so, I eventually got to the point where it was very difficult to be there. And so I don't know if this was kosher, but basically our job is to show up and to advise them when the sheriff comes here of what actions we're taking or what's going on in our district. do we have to stay there and listen to all of the projects? Because what I ended up doing, I will admit now, is I would contact the chair and ask him how they were voted on and then report back to people. And I just want,
I don't-
Peterson know if that's an option.
I can give you what I did, because you're right, is those meetings tend to drag on longer than really what they need to. So just as the sheriff and the CHP comes to this meeting to provide an update, I would attend TAG and provide an update regarding the district, regarding the board. No one has attended. I attended the last TAG meeting, which was, I think, the first part of December. So there hasn't been anyone that's attended there since then. So we have changed in terms of who's president and vice president, and then also the committee assignments. But once I gave my update to TAG, depending upon the agenda, if the agenda I thought was pertinent to the district, I would stay and listen to that agenda topic. But, or if I could provide input into those agenda topics based upon my role of serving on the board for the district. But otherwise, I would leave. Because some of them get into areas that are really outside the scope of responsibility for the district. And they can get into a lot of minutia where you're really not there to contribute anything. So I think it's a matter of looking at the agenda and determining whether or not you representing the district have something to contribute. So that's my 2 cents. So I don't know if there's a different expectation or if
I think our bylaws are silent on attending the entire meeting or something, but as you, and I'll certainly work with board member Pearson on, in terms of if there's an item coming up that I know has had some district background and get that information to her. But a lot of times, a lot of what's on the TAG agenda are not even within the district. They're rural projects or projects that are outside the district and really.
And the thing is that in reality, if you show up at TAG and, you know, a referral has been made to our fire department, a referral has been made to our engineering department, that they're already getting referrals from TCSD through the referral process of the county. And so as a board member, you can't add much more because you can't speak for our entire board. So I was trying to just let Khalid know, you don't have to stay there for 10 hours. That
Only 8.
Only 8, yeah.
And
And
there is a meeting this Thursday.
yeah, I do have the agenda.
I sent it to her.
Oh, you sent it already. Okay, thank
And
you.
we'll get her added to the,
Okay. Well, I think
I
you have an
agree.
opportunity to introduce
I
herself.
don't know if these comments about TAG are helpful to Kaluka since she volunteered to serve on it. And now it's all, and now she's on it, or now she's.
I think I have a conflict that night. No.
But let me just tell you, they do appreciate having the district
They do.
attend the meeting.
they do.
So they really do appreciate that. They appreciate hearing from the district. And they many times will ask questions. So there is value. And I think historically we've tried to have that connection and that linkage because we really do serve. If we were an incorporated city, we would be kind of under the same umbrella.
So it's just, I wanted to bring it to your attention since you knew that you can just give your report and leave if you didn't see any other reason to stay. And I actually will be at Thursday's meeting too, so.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And you got a great alternative, so you could have pink eye for the next 12 months. You're taken care of. Okay, the next general manager's report.
No, I don't have a lot of additional items to share, you know, over the past week, the storm damage has been, storm issues really were prevalent and we kind of covered that pretty thoroughly. I'm in the office the rest of this week. I just want to remind you, I'm starting service on the Twin Cities Community Hospital Board of Directors. And for the most part, their meetings will not conflict with something with the district, but I do have an orientation session this Friday that is during the workday. So So that's that.
I just have a question on the Creekside site. Do we know how much land we need, and is there any, I mean, I drove down the Creekside Road the other day and this is not an agendized item, but is there something we should agendize or something to look at for people income off of that property, like, you know?
And ultimately, I don't believe, so we continue to get inquiries, it's zoned agriculture.
Right.
We continue to get inquiries about people who want to place animals there for grazing.
that's
And
not
it's
good.
not very compatible with our goal of putting wells, because we really, we want to reduce the risk of a nitrate problem. Ultimately, we will not take up a lot of that acreage, because our facilities will be separate and scattered, but not take up the whole land, and there will be other ways to utilize it. But we don't have a final design for the site. Most of our infrastructure needs are gonna be on the land is already kind of 2 levels. Close to the railroad tracks, sits a few feet higher than down closer to the river. Most of the stuff that we're gonna do will be closer to that lower half. But the property lines currently run, there are 4 similarly sized parcels that run the whole width from basically the railroad tracks to the river. 4 up and down. So there will be opportunities to do something else with it, to do other things with the property. They'll be limited if it remains agriculture.
I'm asking because I heard in the valley area, I mean, we're getting rain, which is filling our watersheds or filling our lake. But the recharge to groundwater is still, you know, we all think, oh, because we got this much rain that all our groundwater is recharged. And they're looking at paying property owners in the valley for creating recharge basins to recharge water. And so I don't know anything more about it than that. It was just brought to my attention. So I was wondering if you had heard anything about that, because those might be good sites for that. I don't know if you get any kind of government subsidy for that, like if it's a Williamson Act type thing, or, you know, just something, you know, if any solar companies had approached us for putting solar there, or if any vineyards had approached us. I mean, we just have land sitting there.
Yeah, well, I would, like I said, if it were crop farming, I'd be a lot less concerned about the conflicts with the potential wells, but the inquiries to date have been higher impact in terms of grazing and that kind of thing. And at least in the short term, but we have not been approached by a solar. We may wish to do, once our site is fully designed, to investigate that as well, just for our own use. We're gonna end up with a lot more energy consumption there in the long run. So it might be but it won't take, there's about 50 acres.
Right.
There's there's quite a bit of land that's down there, so.
You could always do lot line
Yes.
adjustments too. Okay. Okay, I thought. I like money coming in.
Any other comments from the board? Any public comment? Okay, committee reports. There is one committee report, the Parks and Recreation and Refuge Committee. Any comments on public comments? Seeing none, our activity update reports. Any comments, questions? Any public comments or questions? Okay, the last item, the director's reports and or comments. Does any director have a comment or anything they've done last week other than stay dry?
I've not attended any meetings on behalf of the district.
Actually, was yesterday. A general manager gave me a tour of the facilities around town and all the damage area. And it was very interesting to see the damage and even all the way from down to the road there. Saw all the damages and undermined road structures and the river. And all the trees that were right still in the middle of the river. And it's just, we're, very fortunate to have, I guess, escaped the major damages. But I mean, that goes to our crew that they were out there working hard. So both the, fire department and the utility crew did an excellent job, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there were 2 people in the county that lost their lives as a result of the storm. So yeah, we're fortunate that it was not worse than what it was, given the amount.
There was a lot of damage.
If I could just add one thing, and I just got this report right before coming in this evening. The day of, on the 9th, just in the North County areas, there was 77 calls the day of the 9th. That lends into the fact that we were, as a fire service in general, tapped out capability wise, and a lot of calls were being queued, especially in the county area. So for instance, if we would have had something significant here in Templeton, we would have been on our own. We would have had those 2 engines, and that would have been it. Likewise with the city of Atascadero, Paso Robles, and the county. I know for example, engine 30, which is the county engine, spent a majority of its time up at the river rescue that you just mentioned with the young
Santa Monica.
child. Yeah,
For Sanderville.
so that's it.
And I think that was kind of it occurred elsewhere in the state as well. I know in my lifetime, this is nothing I've ever seen before. It's been, oh, it's Malibu is flooding, or it's somewhere in Northern California, but this was the entire state. And from listening to the news, there were multiple agencies that were also dealing with the same situation. More calls than what they could handle or even get to because of the rain and mudslides. So
We had 3 instances throughout the day where we had 1 engine on a call and we received another call. So it was beneficial to have that second
I think
engine.
in some ways it means that I know that the readyslow.gov website does speak to preparedness. And so I think it's just a reminder that everybody needs to be prepared for those kind of events, whether it be rain and flooding or some other natural disaster. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. So.
Well, and I think some of the shots of the bridges that you showed earlier, that maybe prior to the rainy season next year, or even if this is gonna continue on from February, March, sending a letter out to our residents, like, do not drive through these. Cause I don't know if you heard about, did you hear about Adelaide Road? The county, it washed out, the county went and poured concrete so that people could pass and put up the signs, do not pass and all that kind of stuff while the concrete was curing. Somebody decided to go around those signs and their truck just dived right into the concrete and was stuck there. They locked their vehicle, so then the county couldn't even, they had to get a special tow truck because, they couldn't go inside the vehicle to release it, to pull it out. So people do crazy things.
They did, yeah, I was pretty surprised just seeing, so these problems that we had in town, they don't really prevent anyone from getting anywhere.
Right.
You go around, and yet we saw cars that it was sketchy.
Yeah.
Going through there.
Yeah, 1 vehicle actually had water come up over its hood and over the windshield that I tried to stop. Yeah.
Okay,
It's just
never mind sending out.
5
these
minutes to
letters.
go around. Yeah, early in the morning, I will say, early in the morning, daybreak, there was probably a couple of hours, or at least an hour before the county, the flooded signs got out, and but by then, there were flooded signs out there. So if you went past, you saw the water, you saw the sign, it was not an accident.
No.
And they still did it.
Any other comments? I do have one. I attended the tour that Jeff put on for the politicians on Saturday, and he did an excellent job of reporting the facts and showing them the right spots. I think they were impressed, whether that means anything or not, but anyway, they were glad to do that. So anyway, thanks, Jeff. You did a great job.
And the purpose of their meeting was, I mean, you're not getting financial aid, it's just.
No, it's just, I mean, just their hands, just their own eyes. They were going from community to community. They cover pass over, going to Tascadero, like, I am. Set up some sites, just getting a briefing from everyone you can see. And then I know in the South County, they've done something similar where Carbajal was up in Los Osos, Morro Bay, where they had actually much worse problems.
Okay, any other comments? All right, I will adjourn the meeting. It's what, 8:45?
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.